All right, this is a very interesting trend coming out of Europe. This is from Forbes magazine. Let me set the context. We all understand this, but it's important to review. Obviously, the pandemic, when everybody went home to work, many people stayed at home, are going to stay at home, whether it's full-time remote or a hybrid model where they're spending some time at home, some time in the office. But here's what's happened. Yes, the commutes have shortened, but we've seen multiple studies where the amount of hours that people are working has increased. So working at home, it's so much better for your life on one hand, but people are having a harder time shutting off the work. Because now you're not leaving the office to catch a train or to beat the traffic. Now you're always in the office, essentially. You're 10 feet away from the office. And so people are having a hard time pulling themselves away. Well, as a result of this, the onslaught of Slack, these messaging softwares that allow people to stay connected all the time. Email has always been a culprit. I despise email with a deep, abiding passion because people feel so much tyranny and stress to answer an email all the time. And nobody thinks about how much it's piling on. We just fire an email, doesn't hurt us, and it creates stress for everybody else. That's a whole nother segment. I won't divulge deeper into my deep hatred of email. Have I been clear enough? I think so. All right. So it's made people more connected than ever. Thus, the stress level, not being able to disconnect, to unplug, is what the pandemic made even worse. It was already a problem. All right. So Belgium, the federal government of Belgium has announced that their federal civil servants will no longer have to answer calls or emails from their leaders outside of working hours. Now, this is 65,000 government workers, and they're calling this the right to disconnect. Kind of catchy. I don't know if that's a right. I'm a purist. So I don't know if that's a right that we all have. I think it's a discipline. I think it's something you ought to do. So sure, let's call it a right. I don't know if it's that high, but I'll tell you what I like about that language. It's essentially through government regulation and their policy to say, look, you're not going to be allowed to do it. There are consequences if you're doing this all the time. It is, in effect, a permission to disconnect. And this will never happen in private corporations, widespread. I think some will say it, but can I just tell you, I think it's a good idea. I think private corporations ought to do the same thing. I think they ought to say, you know what, leaders, the responsibility and the burden is on you to communicate better. I like this. I think American corporations ought to do the same thing. I think if you're running a small business right now, leader, you ought to tinker with the idea of what does this look like? To say to your leaders, we have a company policy. Unless it's an emergency, unless it's an extreme circumstance, guidelines being this, and this, you're not supposed to call people or email people over the weekend. I like it. Because I got news for you. I'm already operating under this policy. Alex, Joe, Amanda, Nathan, I've worked with Joe longer than anybody. Joe, tell the good audience how many times you've got an email or phone call from me that was work-related on an evening or on a weekend, Joe. Be honest. Think really hard, Joe.
0.
Just saying. And Joe and I have been doing a daily show together for 7 years. That's how long we've been together. We had a brief interruption for 2 or 3 years. I'm just telling you, Alex, you've been here how long now? 6 months, 5 months? How many times have you gotten an email or a phone call from me on a weeknight? 0. I'm not, don't misunderstand what I'm doing. I'm not patting myself on the back. I really am not. I know it sounds that way. I'm a little puffed up right now, but I'm puffed up in making a point to say it's possible. Alex and I have a very detailed rhythm of communication every day. We have deadlines. We're doing it. I think it's a crutch. I think it's leadership laziness. Oh, Alex, I didn't plan to say that, but I think it's really good. I'm going to say it. I think calling people at night, emailing them at night, all hours of the morning is leadership laziness. It's selfishness. It's all about you in that moment. Alex has got a life. He's got teenagers. So do I. He's got a wife. I could talk to him about it in the morning. I could text him early. I've done that before. I'm getting ready in the morning. I got a quick thought about the day. I'll shoot a quick text. I'm okay with that because now we're thinking about work. We're engaged. We're going that way. Listen, this is leadership selfishness and leadership laziness. The nonstop calling your people after hours, emailing them all the time. You know what you're doing? You're just piling it on. Just here we go. I'm going to slap some more stuff on you to worry about. And I'm not even thinking about the fact that you got a family life because it's so freaking important that I email you tonight. Now, I'm done with my rant, but let's get practical for a moment. How much better would our corporate communication be? How much more efficient would leaders be in their meetings and in their communication style if they didn't rely on the onslaught of emails and phone calls? Can I get an amen? I hear them all across the country right now. I can hear them faintly. So, Belgium says, you know what? We're not going to allow it. Then now I will tell you that they have said there are some extenuating circumstances by which it will be fine. And again, this is common sense approach to leadership. I applaud the Belgian government on this. By the way, they are one of the countries that is looking at initiating a 4-day work week. So again, we're seeing this happen in Europe. I thought it was interesting. We had our ZipRecruiter economist on, and I asked point blank, where do you think the 4-day work week is going? And the response was, I don't think it's happening anytime soon. And I said the same thing. I just don't know that the American rhythm of business and leadership, I just don't know they're going to embrace that. And largely because I don't know that they need to with all the remote work anyway. I think remote work is here to stay. And I think the way we work is going to continue to change